Hey everybody, thanks again for tuning into my channel. Before we get started with the picks for Week 10 of the 2021-2022 college football season, please be sure to like this video, share it with anyone and everyone you know who you think is interested in college football. Also, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications button so that way you'll be alerted when new videos drop here on my page. All right, let's get into the picks for Week 10, shall we? Week 9 was a good week for me. I went 13-6 overall. For the week, my overall record has climbed therefore to 132 correct picks and 43 incorrect picks. In my top 25 picks last week, I was 2-1, which brings my top 25 picks overall to 18-7 on the year. And most importantly, I was 1-0 in my top 10 picks because the Michigan State Spartans won that game. Down by 16 at one point, came back and won by 4. East Lansing was rocking. Spartan Stadium was going nuts. Great victory for them. Great victory for me. Brings my top 10 overall record of picking games to 6-0 on the season. I have not gotten a top 10 pick wrong yet this year. This week, there's only one team on a bye, and that's the Oklahoma Sooners. There's only one top 25 matchup, and that's number 13 Auburn versus number 14 Texas A&M. So there's a lot of games on the schedule for this week, so let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. This week, I am switching which rankings I am using because the College Football Playoff Committee this past Tuesday issued their first set of rankings for the year, and let me tell you, they are an absolute disaster. They are an absolute abomination. And I have gotten to the point where I think that to solve some of these issues, we need a more dramatic, radical solution than just, let's expand the playoff to 8 teams. I think something more dramatic is needed, but I'm going to save that commentary for a future video. There's a lot of games to get to, so let's jump into this, but now I am using the College Football Playoff rankings here. That's why some of these teams will be ranked differently than they were last week. One team that's not ranked differently is the number 1 team in the nation according to the CFP committee, and that's the Georgia Bulldogs. They are 8-0 on the year, coming off an absolute beatdown of the Florida Gators. They are almost certainly going to represent the SEC East in the SEC Championship game later this year, unless something completely catastrophic happens. They are home this week against Missouri. I don't know anything about Missouri, but I know they're not Georgia, so go with the Georgia Bulldogs. The number 2 team in the nation, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They are 7-1, coming off a drubbing of Tennessee. They are home this week against an LSU team that has a very bad defense. Go with Alabama. The number 3 team in the nation, the Michigan State Spartans, coming off that amazing win against their main rival and fellow top 10 ranked team at the time, and now again this week, the Michigan Wolverines. They are on the road against Purdue today. I'm super nervous about this one because this has trap game written all over it. This has Admiral Agbar coming in going, it's a trap, all over the place. Michigan State is ranked 3rd in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings, so they're solidly in position for a playoff run. They're coming off a huge emotional win in one of the biggest games of the year. Not just of the year, but one of the biggest games that they've played, and they're one of their biggest wins they've had in a number of years, plural. They're on the road this week. Those players were probably getting high-fived and congratulated by fellow students, by professors, by rando people around MSU's campus, administrators, all week this week. They're feeling good. They're on the road against a dangerous Purdue team that took out the number 2 team in the nation, the Iowa Hawkeyes, just a couple of weeks ago in Iowa's home stadium and made them look really bad. Purdue's got 2 players that I think are potentially really dangerous. One is David Bell, the wide receiver, who had 200 receiving yards against Iowa a couple of weeks ago. in a 370 total yard passing attack for Purdue. Michigan State's secondary was weak against Michigan last week, letting up nearly 400 yards of passing offense to Cade McNamara and a bunch of second-rate wide receivers. Purdue's defensive line has an absolute game wrecker who destroyed Iowa a couple of weeks ago. Michigan State's got to do a good job of protecting the passer, protecting Peyton Thorne, or else the same thing's going to happen to them that happened to the Iowa Hawkeyes a few weeks back. If I'm Michigan State, I give Purdue a very healthy dose of Heisman Trophy candidate Kenneth Walker III, who had nearly 200 yards rushing against that vaunted Michigan defense last week. Just gash them on a few major runs in that game. I would hit them with KW3 early and often and play the ball control game. Keep Purdue's offense off the field. Keep your defense off the field. Limit the amount of times and opportunities that Purdue has to expose your weak secondary. This game makes me incredibly nervous. I am willing to trust, however, that Mel Tucker has changed the culture of the Michigan State Spartans. There was a game earlier this year against, I think, Nebraska, where Michigan State had crawled into the top 25. I thought this was the exact type of game that Michigan State in the past would drop. This is also the exact type of game that Michigan State would drop. They proved me wrong against Nebraska earlier, pulling out a win in overtime. I'm going to trust that they're going to prove me wrong again this time, and I'm going to go with Michigan State to win this game, despite my immense nervousness about this one. The number 4 team in the nation, the Oregon Ducks, are on the road against the University of Washington, a Pac-12 North rival. Washington is no good this year, so I'm going to go with Oregon. They look like they have got their offense figured out. They are rolling. They look good. They put up 52 points against Colorado last week. They put up a bunch of points of I think 37 or 40 points against UCLA the previous week. They look like they're rolling pretty easily there in Eugene, so I'm going to go with the Ducks on this one. Number 5, the Ohio State Buckeyes. The only reason they're number 5 is because they lost to Oregon. So the CFP committee counts that as an important factor in their rankings, which that's one of the only smart decisions they've made in this first set of rankings. They're on the road against Nebraska. That game is an afternoon game. It's not a night game, so it doesn't have the same type of cachet that nighttime games in Lincoln would have. Nebraska is not that good. Ohio State is rolling. They struggled a bit. They put up with a tough out in Penn State last week, but they got them eventually. They won that game by 9 points. Nebraska's not Penn State, though. I think Ohio State wins this, and I think they win it relatively easily, so go with the Buckeyes. The number 6 team, according to the College Football Playoff Committee, the Cincinnati Bearcats, despite the fact that they're ranked second in both the AP and the coaches poll, the College Football Playoff Committee has very clearly signaled to them, you don't belong. No matter what you do, we're not putting you in. We'll put you 6th, which is the highest ranking that any Group of 5 school has gotten in the CFP rankings. But it's not enough. And one of the things I am the angriest about is the fact that the CFP committee, this group of 13 people that don't play the game, that don't coach the game, are determining the fate of a team that is proven that they can hang with the big boys. And that is doing everything that is asked of them this season. And yet, this group of 13 people are taking that work and saying, none of it matters, you don't belong here. It's absolute trash. It's a catastrophe. They are home against Tulsa. I hope that Cincinnati goes into this game angry. I hope that they go into this game with a chip on their shoulders the size of the city of Cincinnati. And they say to the CFP committee, oh yeah? You want to put us 6th? We'll show you 6th. And I hope that they bomb the living daylights out of Tulsa. No offense to Tulsa, but I just hope Cincinnati goes in and bombs them. I don't think they're going to absolutely blow them out, but I think it'll win the game. So go with the Cincinnati Bearcats. Number 7, the Michigan Wolverines, dropping only one spot after their loss against Michigan State last week. They were up by 16. They let that game go. Cade McNamara played extremely well. Michigan State did wrap up their running game, though. They did hold that running game of Corum and Haskins in check the whole game. Is that a blueprint for other teams to do that? Perhaps. But Michigan's home against Indiana this week, and Indiana isn't that good. I think Michigan is angry. I think Michigan knows that unless they get some help, unless both Ohio State and Michigan State stumble coming down the stretch, I think Michigan knows that they're not going to get to the Big Ten championship game, and therefore they're not going to get a shot at the college football playoff, and I think that they're angry. I think they come into this game in a mindset that we have to win, and we have to win impressively just in case something happens above us. And I think they're just angry that they lost to their major in-state rival. The question I have is, are we going to see a Michigan team that's going to be more balanced and that lets McNamara throw the ball around a little bit more, like he did against MSU? Or are they going to go back to what they've been doing up until that game last week? And that's rely on Corum, rely on Haskins, have McNamara just manage the game a bit, and just wear Indiana down over the course of the game. That's the biggest question that I want answered. Regardless, I think Michigan's going to beat the living snot out of the Hoosiers. So go with Michigan. Number 8, the Oklahoma Sooners coming in at 9-0 on a bye week this week. So we will move to the number 9 team in the nation, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Holy cow, when's the last time you heard Wake Forest being in the top 10? Not any time that I can remember. They are on the road against North Carolina this week. Last time I heard, the Vegas odds makers had North Carolina a slight favorite in this game, despite the fact that North Carolina's had struggles, despite the fact that they're not undefeated, despite the fact that Wake Forest is undefeated. And they're coming off a 45-7 drubbing of Duke. I think those Vegas odds makers know something. I think they've got connections. I think they've got info. I think they have some sort of information that I'm not clued into that's putting the odds in North Carolina's favor. Despite the fact that they only let up 7 points to Duke last week, Wake Forest did let up 56 points to Army. You might retort, well, that's Army. They're one of the service academies. They use the triple option offense. How often does Wake Forest see the triple option? Granted, but it still exposed some vulnerabilities with Wake Forest, letting up points. And one thing that we know North Carolina can do is put up points. I'm going to call the upset on this one. It's at North Carolina. I know it's just down the road from... Where is Wake Forest? I think it's is it in Raleigh or is that North Carolina State? I don't really remember, but it's in North Carolina, so it's not that much of a road game, but it's at North Carolina. I think the odds makers know something about this game, and I'm willing to pick the upset in this one. Go with the Tar Heels to end Wake Forest's undefeated season. Number 10, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, coming off a 10-point win against the aforementioned North Carolina Tar Heels. They are home against Navy. Navy is not the team that we have seen them be in the last couple of seasons. Despite the fact that they lost close against Cincinnati, that game was at home. This game is on the road. Go with Notre Dame and the Fighting Irish. Number 11, Oklahoma State, sitting at 7-1, coming off a 55-3 drubbing of Kansas. I believe I said Oklahoma State was going to whip them, and whip them they did. They are on the road at West Virginia. Excuse me. Last week, I called West Virginia winning against Iowa State when they came to Morgantown. Oklahoma State is better than Iowa State. And I don't think that the Morgantown magic is going to work 2 weeks in a row. I don't think it's the same context. Excuse me. I don't think it's the same context this week. I think Oklahoma State knows that they control their own destiny for the Big 12 championship. They're looking at a showdown in the Bedlam game against Oklahoma, where Oklahoma might be undefeated and Oklahoma State might only have one loss. And that game might have huge ramifications for the championship game, which has huge ramifications for the CFP. I think Oklahoma State goes into Morgantown and takes care of business. It's not 55-3 taking care of business, but they're going to take care of business. Go with the Cowboys on this one. Number 12, and fellow Big 12 team Baylor, coming off a win against Texas, coming off a 7-point win against the Texas Longhorns last week. They are on the road against TCU. TCU has just fired their longtime coach, Gary Patterson. If you listen to the pundits and the former players and the former coaches, they'll tell you that one of two things happens when you fire a coach midseason. A, your team rallies and you win a couple of games and you make a good showing of yourself. Or B, you fall apart. I don't see the former happening with the Horned Frogs. Gary Patterson is a legend at TCU. He literally has a statue of himself that they made for him outside the stadium because they respect him and they love him that much. But he wasn't getting the job done for them anymore, so they let him go mid-season, which I feel is a bit disrespectful for everything that Patterson has done for that school and for that program. But that's the decision that they made. I think TCU falls apart. I think Baylor goes in and I think they get the win. They might have a good showing in this game. But we saw what happened with Texas Tech firing their head coach and then going against Oklahoma and getting beat down. TCU's at risk of that happening. I don't think it does because I think Baylor plays a different style of ball where they rely on defense. They don't have a high-flying offense. I think they win comfortably, but it's not a beatdown. But regardless, go with the Baylor Bears. In the only top 25 matchup of the weekend, number 13, Auburn is on the road in College Station to take on number 14, Texas A&M. Auburn has a good defense, but I don't trust Bo Nix as their quarterback. We've seen the result of home field advantage in College Station when Texas A&M took down Alabama earlier this season. I think Texas A&M gets the job done here. I think this is call it an upset if you want to, but, one ranking difference isn't much of an upset, even though technically it is an upset. But I think Texas A&M gets the job done. I think they do enough to win. I think this is a close game, but I think Bo Nix makes a couple of mistakes that cost Auburn, and I think Texas A&M gets the win at home. Number 15, BYU. The Cougars sitting at 7-2, coming off a 66-49 win against Virginia last week. They are home against Idaho State. Look for Baylor to win this game and win this game going away. BYU to win this game going away. Number 16, Ole Miss. They're sitting at 6-2 after that 11-point loss against Auburn last week. They are home versus Liberty. The Liberty Flames are 7-2. They're not a bad team. I don't know too much else about them except their record, and they're coached by former Ole Miss head coach Hugh Freeze, who was ignominiously fired after a massive scandal involving the recruitment of certain players onto the Ole Miss team. I think Ole Miss gets back into their winning ways this week. I think they get their offense back together. That's my phone going off. I think their offense gets back in action, gets back on track with Matt Corral. Go with the Running Rebels. Number 17, Mississippi State at 5-3. They're on the road against Arkansas. I have no idea how Mississippi State, with a 5-3 record, despite the fact that they had a solid and impressive 14-point win against a ranked Kentucky team last week. I don't know how they're ranked 17th in the nation. I don't know how the CFP committee looks at that team and goes, yep, that's the 17th best team in America. I think they go on the road this week, and I'm calling the upset. I think Arkansas gets back into their identity. I think they get back to running the ball. I think they get back to playing tough football. I think they get back to running their mobile quarterback. I think they're too much for Mississippi State to handle. I think Mississippi State drops this one. I think this is a bit of a trap game for them. Coming off a big win against Kentucky, ranked in the top 20 in the CFP polls, on the road against an Arkansas team that has proven to be not quite as good as we thought they were early on in the season. I think they lose sight of things. I think the bad Mississippi State team that's got 3 losses shows up, and I think they get their 4th loss. Go with Arkansas for the upset. The aforementioned Kentucky Wildcats coming in at number 18. They're home versus Tennessee. Despite the fact that Tennessee is a better team this season under the tutelage of Josh Heupel and quarterback Joe Milton III, who I think is still out with an injury, Tennessee's not having a great year. Kentucky's lost 2 games in a row now. I think they also get back onto their winning ways. And I think they take out Tennessee at home. They're in the friendly confines of Lexington. I think they get the job done against Tennessee. Go with the Wildcats on that one. Number 19, NC State. They are on the road at Florida State. Florida State's won a couple of games. They're building momentum. It seems like they're figuring some stuff out. NC State is a good team. They're not a great team. I think this is going to be a good matchup. I'm going to go with NC State on this one because I don't fully trust Florida State. I don't trust that winning streak that they've been on, or not winning streak because I think they lost their game to Clemson last week. But I don't think that their performance over the last couple of weeks indicates that they're necessarily on the rise yet. I think it's a matter of pride. I think those kids, I think those coaches have a lot of pride, and I think that's carrying them through. I think NC State gets them in this one, though. Go with the Wolfpack. Number 20, the Minnesota Golden Gophers crawling back into the top 25. They're taking on a bad Illinois team. Despite the 9 overtime win against Penn State, Illinois ain't no good. Go with Minnesota on this one. Number 21, the Wisconsin Badgers at 5-3. They are on the road against Rutgers. This is another one that I just don't get. Wisconsin is 5-3. Penn State's 5-3. Penn State has a win over Wisconsin, yet Penn State's not ranked and Wisconsin is ranked. I don't understand. I don't get so much of what these rankings are from the CFP committee. But again, that's neither here nor there. Wisconsin's going to go on the road to Rutgers, who's not that good, and they're going to beat them handily. Go with Wisconsin on that one. Number 22, the Iowa Hawkeyes, managing to keep themselves in the top 25 at 6-2. They're on the road at Northwestern. Iowa's offense is offensive. It's abysmal. It's garbage. Northwestern, though, is 3-5 on the year. They're not any good. I think Iowa's defense gets the job done. Look for a low-scoring game here. Look for an offensive... What would be the opposite of an offensive outburst? Look for offensive drudgery in this one. Look for this one to be just a boring game. Bad offense. Good defense on Iowa's part, but probably not good defense on Northwestern's part. Low-scoring game. Iowa gets the win, though. Number 23, Fresno State, coming off a 10-point win against San Diego State. They're taking on Boise State at home this week. Boise State's proven in their win against BYU earlier this season that they can go on the road and they can get themselves a win. I'm willing to trust Fresno State, though, coming off that win against San Diego State in this game because Boise State's not having a great season. So go with Fresno. They can put up points. Go with Fresno State. The aforementioned San Diego State Aztecs coming in at number 24. They are on the road at Hawaii. Hawaii ain't no good. Go with San Diego State. And then finally, the Pitt Panthers coming in at number 25, coming off their stunning loss against Miami at home. They are at Duke. Duke is no good. They got beat down by Wake Forest last week. They're going to get beat down again this week by Pittsburgh. Go with the Panthers. And that does it for the top 25 matchups for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to like this video, share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. Also, please hit that subscribe button and the notifications so that way you'll be alerted to when new videos drop on my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy watching the games this week. I know I will, and I'll see you all again soon.